Former President Donald Trump is once again at the center of national headlines as legal battles and political rallies shape his path toward the 2024 presidential election. With new developments unfolding in courtrooms and campaign trails alike, Trump's influence on American politics remains as strong and as controversial as ever.
President Trump, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here to mark your first 100 days in office. It has been an incredibly busy 100 days. You've signed more than 140 executive orders. You've been focused on the border, the economy, foreign policy. What is your biggest goal in the next 100 days?
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of results. We've already seen them. On the border, we have the best border in the history of our country. It was 99.999. And nobody ever thought that was possible. In fact, Biden, if you remember, said he has to get legislation. And I said, no, you just need a new president. And I guess I was right. We have the best border we've ever had. We're doing great on illegal immigration. We are being hit hard by judges that I think they're trying to take away the power of the presidency. I was elected in a massive landslide and a big vote. We won the swing states. We won the popular vote. We won the district votes by tremendous numbers. We won everything. And one of the primary reasons I was elected was to get people out of our country that were allowed. We have prisoners, we have murderers, we have terrorists in our country, we have people from mental institutions that are seriously insane. They all came in through Biden's open border policy, and I was elected to get them out and to seal the border, but to get them out. And we'll have judges, they're activist judges, they're saying, well, you know, you don't have the right to take out murderers and people that you don't even want to talk about. These are really some really bad criminal people, and they're here illegally. So, you know, they talk about your next question will be due process, but they talk about due process, but do you get due process when you're here illegally?
We're going to talk about all of that. We are going to talk about deportation, but I want to start on the economy, sir, which obviously the biggest issue for voters. We got new numbers today, better than expected job numbers.
Much better.
At the same time, the economy shrank in the first quarter. You've been arguing all week that this is President Biden's economy. Is this now your economy, sir?
Well, I think certain aspects of it are. Costs are. I was able to get down the costs, but even that, it takes a while to get them down, but we got them down good. We lost $5 to $6 billion a day with Biden, $5 to $6 billion. And I've got that down to a great number right now in a record time. You know, we're talking about 100 days. But just think of what that is, $5 billion a day we're losing on trade. And we were very tough with China, as you know. We put 145% tariff on. Nobody's ever heard of such a thing. And we've essentially cut off trade relationships by putting that much of a tariff on. And that's okay. We've gone cold turkey. That means that we're not losing. You know, we lost $1 trillion to China. $1 trillion. That means we're not losing $1 trillion when we go cold turkey because we're not doing business with them right now. And they want to make a deal. They want to make a deal very badly. We'll see how that all turns out, but it's got to be a fair deal. But think of it. We were losing $1 trillion. And that was a big part of the $5 million a day.
And I want to talk about China, but just staying on this idea of the economy. On the eve of your inauguration, the stock market spiked. You called it the Trump effect.
It spiked because I was elected president. Well, it spiked because of anybody else. It spiked because they see what I'm going to do. They know what I'm going to do with the tariffs and everything else. And I think it's actually working out better than we anticipated. Did you see oil prices? Did you see gasoline is now below, in many cases, in many states, below $2 a gallon, $1.98, $1.99, $1.97?
Well, my question, sir, is when the stock market spiked, you said this is the Trump effect. When the numbers weren't so good earlier this week, you said it's the Biden effect. Are you only taking ownership of the good numbers and not the bad numbers?
Well, I think he did a lot of very bad things, and despite some of the bad things, we're overcoming them. But he was bad on the border. He was bad on the economy. We had the worst inflation in the history of our country. Look, Biden gave us the worst inflation in the history of our country. People, it didn't matter what they made because they were losing their shirt because of costs. Now take a look at what happened. Oil is down, gasoline is down, groceries are down, eggs. You were the one that asked me. You asked me about eggs. It was the first week. I didn't even know anything about what were you talking about. Egg prices were so high you couldn't buy eggs. They didn't have any eggs. And they said Easter is going to be a disaster. Well, we had Easter at the White House, and we had thousands of eggs, and they were down 87%.
Yeah, a lot of that, of course, spike was because of bird flu. But when does it become the Trump economy?
Why do you say that?
Well, tell me,
we had the same bird flu as he had.
When does it become the Trump economy?
It partially is right now, and I really mean this. I think the good parts are the Trump economy, and the bad parts are the Biden economy, because he's done a terrible job. He did a terrible job on everything, from his auto pen, which I'm sure he knew nothing about some of the things he was supposedly signing, to immigration. You look at what happened with immigration, how bad it was. Think of it. We have murderers, 11,888 murderers. Many of them murdered more than one person. Think of that. And they're in our country. Now, we've gotten a lot of them out, and we know who many of them are, and we're on the hunt. But why would anybody do that? Why would anybody, who could do such a thing where they'd allow hundreds of thousands and even millions of people into our country who are criminals and murderers at the highest level? Who would do this?
But, sir, you acknowledge when you announced your tariffs, for example, the stock market dropped. It's been volatile. It has since gone up.
It is,
do you
but now
take
it's
responsibility
Look at
for
today.
that? Yeah. Do you take responsibility when it drops?
Ultimately, I take responsibility for everything, but I've only just been here for a little more than 3 months. But the stock market, look at what's happened in the last short period of time. Didn't it have 9 or 10 days in a row, or 11 days where it's gone up? And the tariffs have just started kicking in. And we're doing really well psychologically. I mean, the fake news was giving me such press on the tariffs. The tariffs are going to make us rich. We're going to be a very rich country.
So let's talk about the tariffs. And I want to ask you about something you said this week. Got a lot of attention. You were at your cabinet meeting. You said, quote, I'm going to quote what you said, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30.
Yeah.
And maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. Are you saying that your tariffs will cause some prices to go up?
No, I think the tariffs are going to be great for us because it's going to make us rich.
But you said some dolls are going to cost more. Isn't that an acknowledgement that some prices will go up?
I don't think a beautiful baby girl that's 11 years old needs to have 30 dolls. I think they can have 3 dolls or 4 dolls because what we were doing with China was just unbelievable. We had a trade deficit of hundreds of billions of dollars with China.
When you say they could have $3 instead of $30, are you saying Americans could see empty store shelves?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they don't need to have $30. They can have 3. They don't need to have 250 pencils. They can have 5.
But you're basically saying there could be some supply shortages because of the tariffs.
We don't have to waste money on a trade deficit with China for things we don't need, for junk that we don't need.
Well, prices are already going up on some popular items, tires, strollers.
This is such a dishonest interview already. Prices are down on groceries. Prices are down for oil. Prices are down for all energy. Prices are down at tremendous numbers for gasoline. And let me tell you, when you have the big thing, what he did, he spent like a stupid person, which he was, but he spent like a very stupid person. And that was bad for inflation. But what really killed us with inflation was the price of energy. It went up to $3.90, even $4, and in California, $5 and $6, right? Okay. I have it down to $1.98 in many states right now. When you go that much lower on energy, which is ahead of my prediction because I really thought I could get it down into the 250s. We have it down at $1.98 in numerous places. But when you say costs are going up, even mortgage rates are going down.
Well, but let me give you some examples. These are actual examples. So you're saying the prices that are going down, some prices are going up. Tires, strollers, some clothing in the wake of your tariffs.
Excuse me, that's peanuts compared to energy. Energy is 60% of the cost.
But, sir, you
you
campaigned on a promise to bring prices down on day
Well, I don't know. When you say strollers are going up, what kind of a thing? I'm saying that gasoline is going down. Gasoline is thousands of times more important than a stroller someplace.
But what do you say to Americans who say they voted for you because they want and they need relief right now?
And they're getting it.
Right now? What about those
even mortgage rates?
different items I just
mortgage
mentioned?
rates are going down, despite the fact that we have a stubborn Fed.
But you said even dolls could cost a couple bucks more.
Maybe they might, but you don't need to have, as I said, $35. You can have 2, 3, 4, and save a lot of money. We don't need to feed the beast.
I guess you're talking about this transition cost. How long should people expect that transition to last, Mr. President?
I can't tell you that. I can tell you that we're making a lot of money. We're doing great. Again, we're losing more than $5 billion a day. $5 billion a day. You don't talk about that. And right now, we're going to be at a point very soon where we're making money every day. Look.
How soon?
We were losing hundreds of billions of dollars with China. Now we're essentially not doing business with China. Therefore, we're saving hundreds of billions of dollars. Very simple.
You take me to my next question, which is about China. They've been making a number of public statements.
Very positive statements the last 24 hours.
Well, and most recently, they said before talks could happen, the U.S. would need to remove unilateral tariffs. Would you consider dropping the tariffs to get China to the negotiating table?
No. First of all, you're giving me a statement that was said a week ago. You're not giving the statement that was said today.
I have May 2nd Chinese Commerce Ministry.
Do you know what they said today?
The U.S.
We're
wants to negotiate.
forward.
It should show sincerity by preparing to take actions in correcting its mistakes and canceling the unilateral tariffs.
They made, first of all, they made numerous statements.
Yes, they've made numerous statements.
How many people speak for
Yes.
China? It's like
Yes.
50
They've made numerous
I
statements.
can give you
Yes.
a statement for any occasion.
Yes, yes.
But they said today they want to talk. Look, China, and I don't like this, I'm not happy about this, China's getting killed right now. They're getting absolutely destroyed. Their factories are closing. Their unemployment is going through the roof. I'm not looking to do that to China. Now, at the same time, I'm not looking to have China make hundreds of billions of dollars and build more ships and more army tanks and more airplanes.
So you're not, just to be very clear, you're not dropping the tariffs against China to get them to the negotiating table. Those tariffs are staying on.
Why would I do that?
Would you lower them?
At some point, I'm going to lower them because otherwise you could never do business with them.
Yeah.
And they want to do business very much. Look, their economy is really doing badly. Their economy is collapsing.
So small businesses say they are being hurt by the Chinese tariffs, and some could be forced to shut down.
And many businesses are being helped.
Are you
Look at the
considering
automobile
tariff
business.
relief for small businesses?
Why do you always mention that, you know, you pick up a couple of little businesses? What about the car business? They're going to make a fortune because of the tariffs. Do you know that the union, the head of the union, who was no fan of mine, Sean Fain, I guess his name is, right? He didn't endorse me. The Teamsters did. A lot of people did. A lot of unions did. But he didn't. He couldn't stand me. Now he's saying, wow, what Trump's done for the automobile, I can't believe it. I assume he's going to probably now say the next thing he can say is, I endorse this guy. He's the greatest I've ever seen. He can't believe it's happened. He said, we've been waiting 40 years for somebody to do what Trump is doing. So why don't you mention the big car industry instead of mentioning somebody that's doing strollers?
Well, I'm just asking you about small businesses. Are there any discussions about giving any relief to small businesses?
They're not going to need it.
Okay.
They're going to make so much money.
Are these tariffs?
If you build your product here. Remember, there are no tariffs if you build your product here. It's very easy. It's very simple.
Are these tariffs permanent, Mr. President?
Depends on what you're talking about. One of the things that is going to bring and has brought... So I think we probably have close to $9 trillion of investments coming into this country. If you look at other presidents, there's never been anything like that. This is over a period of 2 months. You got to give me a little break on the 1 month because we're 3 months. But, you know, let's say we had to get started. We had a lot of fake news at the beginning, so we had to beat that down. But so let's say in 2 months. So in just a short period of time, a matter of a couple of months, we have the largest number ever in history invested in the United States and committed. We have between guaranteed spoken for and people that are going to make a decision and announce it pretty soon, close to $9 trillion. We've never had anything close. Now, That's Apple building $500 billion worth of plants. They always built their plants in China. Now they're building their plants over here. That's the biggest computer company, the biggest chip company in the world. You know, the chip company from Taiwan, which is the biggest in the world, is committed for $500 billion. Another one's committed for $300 billion. We have companies, nobody's ever seen anything like it. And let me tell you the other thing, very importantly, automobile companies, plant after plant after plant, Toyota, Honda, Ford, General Motors, Stellantis. I mean, nobody's ever seen anything like it. And I don't like this, but it happens to be. They're stopping work in Mexico and they're stopping work in Canada, and they're all moving here.
This is important, though. You're not taking the possibility that these tariffs could be permanent off the table. Some of them.
Oh, I wouldn't do that, because if somebody thought they were going to come off the table, why would they build in the United States?
Let me ask you
You
about,
understand that, right?
Yeah, but that's why I'm asking, because there's a lot of, I think, uncertainty for CEOs, for business owners. They want to know, are these tariffs permanent?
I think there's only uncertainty in the fake news. I don't think there's uncertainty. I mean, I've been very rigid, very strong on it, but I will say I'm flexible. Like with respect to parts made outside of the country, I gave the automobile companies a little extra time. You know, you're talking about 15% and then 10% of the parts put in a car. I gave them a little extra time without penalizing them. And I did that only to help, you know, companies. We're looking to help companies. We want them to thrive and to hire a lot of people. And that's what's happening.
Let me ask you about some of what Wall Street has said. Some people on Wall Street have expressed concerns that the possibility of a recession is increasing. And I want to know what you think about that. Are you comfortable with the country potentially dipping into a recession for a period of time if you are able to achieve your long-term goals?
Well, you know, you say some people on Wall Street say, well, I tell you something else. Some people on Wall Street say that we're going to have the greatest economy in history. Why don't you talk about them? Because some people on Wall Street say this is the greatest thing that ever happened.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at, though. It's the same question.
Yeah, there are many people on Wall Street say this is going to be the greatest windfall ever happened.
And that's my question.
Remember
the
this.
Long term. Yeah. Is it okay in the short term to have a recession?
This. Look, yeah, everything's okay. What we are, I said, this is a transition period. I think we're going to do fantastically. One of your colleagues on another fake news station, ABC, said, do you guarantee 100% that a certain person is going to do a fantastic job as, let's say, Secretary of Defense, okay? Because that was the question. I said, what kind of a question is that? Do I guarantee 100%? Nobody guarantees 100%. But I will say this. I think we're going to have an economy the likes of which we've never had before. You know, my 4 years were phenomenal, as you know, the stock market. In fact, even though we had to go through the COVID thing, that horrible situation with COVID, we did numbers, and when I gave it over, when I handed it over, the election was rigged, and because of that, we have a lot of problems, by the way. But when I handed it over, what happened? The market was higher than it was just previous to COVID coming in. Yeah. Nobody could believe it. The stock market I'm talking about.
I don't want to look back, but you did take your case to court about that.
Back.
You took your case to court about your allegations against the election. Let me ask you, sir.
There's no question about it. The election was rigged. The facts are in, and it's still being litigated. Let's go.
You did take your case to court more than 60 times and didn't win those cases.
I won a lot of court cases.
Just to button that up, though, sir. Just to button that up.
What are you talking about?
How
the election
worried are you?
Are we talking about the election
Let's talk about here and now. Let's talk about
the
here and now.
election of 2020?
Let's not talk about. Let's talk about here and now. Are you worried about a recession?
No.
Okay.
No. I think we're going to have the greatest economic.
I mean, are you worried it could happen? Do you think it could happen?
Anything can happen, but I think we're going to have the greatest economy in the history of our country. I think we're going to have the greatest economic boom in history.
Let me ask you about this call to Amazon founder Jeff Bezos this week in response to a report that Amazon was going to display tariff costs next to product prices. Are you going to punish CEOs who increase their prices because of tariffs?
I think what is a great misnomer is the word tariff in many cases. It's not, to me, I don't view it as a tax. I view it as an incentive for people to come into the United States and build plants, factories, offices, a lot of things. I think it's an incentive, but the thing that's not known is if you look back and see, oftentimes like China or Vietnam or other countries, not just China, because China's an abuser, but there are other abusers. Many of them are friends, the so-called, I say friend and foe, and friend is oftentimes worse than foe. But what people don't understand is, and this is a lot, the country eats the tariff, the company eats the tariff, and it's not passed along at all.
Well, some CEOs are saying they're going to have to pass it on. So how do you deal with those CEOs?
But the company,
how do you deal with those CEOs?
China is eating the tariffs right now.
What do you say to those CEOs who are saying, we might have to pass this on to the consumer?
Well, they say that because maybe it's to their advantage to say it.
Will you punish them?
No, because you know what? I want them to build plants in the United States. That way they don't have any tariffs. See, tariffs will, and not only will, look at what's happened. In 2 months, we're close to $9 trillion of investment. We've never been anywhere near that.
What did you say to Jeff Bezos?
He's just a very nice guy. We have a relationship. I asked him about it. He said, well, I don't want to do that. And he took it off immediately.
So he changed course. And will you take that same tactic with other CEOs if you
I'll
feel
always
like...
call people if I disagree with them. If I think that somebody's doing something that's incorrect, wrong, or maybe hurtful to the country, I'll call, absolutely. Wouldn't you want me to call? Biden wouldn't call because he didn't know what was happening, but I do.
Takes me to my next question. Today's strong jobs report likely means, not clear, but likely means the Fed is less likely to lower interest rates.
Well, he should lower them, and at some point he will. He'd rather not because he's not a fan of mine. He just doesn't like me because I think he's a total stiff. And, it's just one of those things. He should lower them. And I wish the people that are on that board would get him to lower because we are at a perfect time. It's already late, but he should lower interest rates.
Do you rule out removing Fed Chair Jerome Powell?
I'm not, I get to change him very quickly anyway. It's in a very short period of time.
In 2026. You're not going to remove, you don't have plans to remove him before 2026 when his time's up?
That was a total, why would I do that? I get to replace the person in another short period of time.
Okay. This week, you reshuffled your national security team.
Yeah.
You moved National Security Advisor Mike Waltz to UN ambassador. Just to remind our viewers, Waltz, of course, started that unsecure text chain where sensitive information was shared. Mr. President, was that move a punishment?
No, I just think he'll do a nice job in the new position. Marco's doing an outstanding job. No, Marco won't keep, Marco's very busy doing other things, so he's not going to keep it long term. We're going to put somebody else in. But I think Mike, who's, as you know, he's a fine guy, and I think he'll do a very good job. Knows the countries, knows leadership. And I think he'll do a very good job at the United Nations. And in the meantime, Marco's really doing something special. And it's going to work out very well.
We're hearing some potential names. Stephen Miller's name, one of your longtime, most loyal aides. His name has been talked about as a potential national security advisor. Is he someone you're looking at?
Well, I'd love to have Stephen there, but that would be a downgrade. Stephen is much higher in the totem pole than that, in my opinion.
Can you tell us who the front runner is right now?
I have a lot of people that want it. I will tell you, I have everybody calling. Everybody wants to be a part of this administration. So at some point we'll, probably do that. There's a theory, Henry Kissinger did both. There's a theory that you don't need two people, but I think I have some really great people that could do a good job.
So Secretary Rubio could continue to have both jobs indefinitely?
He could, yeah, he could. But I think he even would like to probably see, because it is a little bit different. But in the meantime, he'll handle it. And I think Mike, if that goes forward, he still has to get approved. But I think Mike will do a very good job at the United Nations.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, obviously also on that unsecure text chain. He was sharing sensitive information. Are you looking for a new Secretary of Defense, Mr.
No,
President?
not even a little bit. No. Pete's going to be great.
His job is safe right now?
We're doing a fantastic job against the Houthis, who like blowing ships up and watching them sink in the ocean. We're hitting them very hard. No, he's doing a very good job.
His job is safe right now?
Totally safe.
Okay. Let's talk about the border.
Okay.
Let's talk about deportations. Border crossings are at their lowest level ever recorded. Is the border...
Is that good?
Is the border now secure?
Yeah, it's really secure.
It's
Isn't that
absolutely
good?
secure.
When you say that, doesn't that just sound good? After being abused for years by an incompetent president that allowed people to pour through an open border, criminals from all over the world, murderers and insane people from mental institutions and insane asylums. Isn't it a beautiful thing when you say it's the most secure it's ever been in the history of our country? Isn't that a nice statement?
Well, I'm curious to know what it means. You declared a national emergency on the southern border. The order is still in place.
By the way,
even
it
though
means
you're saying
exactly
the border's
what you
secure.
said. It means we have the most secure border we've ever had.
Well, and I guess the question
complicated.
becomes, when will you know that the emergency is over? Are you planning to lift it at some point? Is it necessary? Because obviously the military is involved. Will you lift that emergency?
Well, the biggest emergency is the courts aren't allowing us to take really.
We're going to
bad
talk
people
about
out.
that, but talk to me first about
That's to me
this.
the emergency.
Talk to me first about this.
The border
emergency.
now is not the emergency. The border is it's all part of the same thing, though. The big emergency right now is that we have thousands of people that we want to take out, and we have some judges that want everybody to go to
Some
court.
of them you appointed, sir, including
That's all right.
3 on the
that,
Supreme Court.
They change. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how that happens, but they do change.
Just to button this up, though, are you planning to lift that emergency order anytime soon? Now that the border's secure?
We have an
You say the
emergency. We
border's
have a
secure.
massive emergency overall. It's an overall emergency on immigration. And if the courts don't allow us to take people out, if we had to have a court case, think of it, every single person, we have millions of people. We're going to have millions of court cases. Figure 2 weeks a court case. It would be 300 years.
So let's talk about this, because obviously you've had a back and forth with the Supreme Court. In a 9-0 decision, the Supreme Court directed your administration to facilitate the return. You've talked about this in the past, of Kilmar Abrego Garcia from a prison in El Salvador, whose deportation your administration called an administrative error. You said in a recent interview you could bring him back, but you won't. Are you defying the Supreme Court, sir?
No, I'm relying on the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, who's very capable, doing a great job, because I'm not involved in the legality or the illegality. I have lawyers to do that, and that's why I have a great DOJ. We have a great one. We had a very corrupt one before. Now we have a great one. And they're not viewing the decision the way you said it. They don't view it that way at all. They think it's a totally different decision.
Well, you say you have the power to bring him back, though. Your attorney general says, quote, that's up to El Salvador. Just to put a fine point on this, do you have the power to bring Abrego Garcia back as the Supreme Court?
Well, I have
ordered?
the power to ask for him to come back if I'm instructed by the attorney general that it's legal to do so. But the decision as to whether or not he should come back will be the head of El Salvador. He's a very capable man.
Well, you know, and your attorney general has said the issue is with that word facilitate. Will you seek clarification from the Supreme Court? Do you need to go back to the Supreme Court?
We may do that. I was asking about that. We may do that. There are some people that say, bring him back, put him in trial, and you get him out right away, because you see what happened just this morning. Tapes came out, horrible tapes from his wife. You don't get much worse than that. You don't get, I mean, he seems certainly like a very dangerous, very bad person, but even the wife, who was so afraid, she was afraid to talk, and all of a sudden tapes got released this morning that were devastating to him.
And this is the point, sir, about due process. The Constitution says every person, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Why not push to have him come back, present all of that evidence in court, let a judge decide?
Well, I'll leave that to the lawyers, and I'll leave that to the Attorney General of the United States,
But do you
because they're in
agree-
it. You have to understand, I'm dealing with Russia and Ukraine. I'm dealing
And we're
with
going to talk
China.
about that.
I'm dealing with Iran. I'm dealing with Rwanda and Congo, who are fighting, and we're trying to get that one straightened out, and I think we have done that. Did a great job. Nobody even talks about it, but I think we're close to doing that. They're looking like they're going to maybe make a peace deal, which would be good. But I'm dealing with a lot of different things. I don't know much about this gentleman other than I hear he's an absolute not good person. And I have very capable legal people, John Sauer, as you know, and all top people. And I have to rely on that to interpret whatever's said by the Supreme Court. Now, with that being said, I have tremendous respect for the Supreme Court. Look, 3 of the people are people I appointed.
Right.
And I have great respect for the Supreme Court. And I would expect that the Attorney General will be doing the right thing.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says
I don't know. It might say that, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. We have thousands of people that are some murderers and some drug dealers and some of the worst people on earth. Some of the worst, most dangerous people on earth. And I was elected to get them the hell out of here, and the courts are holding me from doing it.
But even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They have a different interpretation.
Is anyone in your administration right now in contact with El Salvador about returning Abrego Garcia to the United States?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the Attorney General that question.
Okay. At least 2 Americans have been mistakenly detained and released by your administration, immigration authorities. Mr. President, should lawful residents of this country start carrying paperwork with them when they leave their homes?
I don't think that'll be necessary, but what you're not saying is that many people have been killed, maimed, badly hurt by illegal immigrants that came over that are from prisons and from jails and from mental institutions, and they're hurting our people. And if we don't get them out, we're not going to have a country for long. We need honest media, and we need walls. We need to have borders. And by the way, I built a lot of walls, and if we didn't do that, we wouldn't be able to have those. You know, we would not be able to have the kind of numbers if I wasn't successful in building hundreds of miles of wall.
Very quickly, sir, the last time you and I spoke in December, you said that you would consider working on getting Dreamers legal status. Dreamers, of course, those who were brought here illegally as children. Where do those efforts stand? Is that a priority for you?
Well, it's not a priority for the Democrats, because every time we talk about it, they don't want to talk about it because I guess they like it as a political issue, but they're not good at political issues because they still want to have men playing women's sports.
Well, Republicans do control Congress right now, Mr. President.
But the Democrats don't.
Are you going to make Dreamers a priority?
Well, you need, for that, you would need to have support from Democrats, and we have no support from the Democrats.
Have you had any discussions about Dreamers?
Yeah, we've had discussions. We would do something. I'd love to put in beautiful immigration for everybody. But the Democrats don't want to approve anything. All they want to do is knock out a tax bill. We're trying to get approved right now the biggest tax cut in the history of our country. And if it doesn't get approved, it's a 68% tax increase, and that's what the Democrats want. They want a 68% tax increase. It's rather incredible.
And I do want to talk to you about your legislation, but let's talk about DOJ very quickly. DOJ has fired and then rehired thousands of federal workers, including FAA employees in charge of aviation safety, specialists working on nuclear weapon safety. What do you say to those who believe Elon Musk's chainsaw approach has jeopardized the safety and security of Americans?
Well, he found $160 billion worth of fraud, waste, and abuse. I mean, I think he's done an amazing job. I think his people have done an incredible job. They're brilliant people. They know the computer. I actually asked him, what's their big trait? He said they're unbelievable at computers. In other words, you can't fake them out because these people were, in many cases, crooks. But it was fraud, waste, and abuse. They found, your question should be asked a different way. Were certain things found? Yes. How much? $160 billion. Think of what $160 billion is. He found $160.
He said he'd find $2 trillion.
Well, we're not finished yet. We're not finished yet.
Do you think the work continues even though he's leaving?
He said sure. He's leaving behind some very brilliant people. They were on television last night. They're super high IQ people. I like high IQ people. The Democrats don't have many of them.
Let me ask you about some news that broke. You are threatening to rescind Harvard's tax-exempt status.
Yeah.
And yet directing the IRS to investigate and rescind a university's tax-exempt status is contrary to what's in the federal law. The law says you can't do this. Do you think you're following the law?
Well, I tell you, I'm going to just follow what the lawyers say. They say that we're allowed to do that. and I'm all for it. But everything I say is subject to the laws being 100% adhered to.
Are you willing to take this to court if it becomes a court fight? You're going to take it that far?
We've won a lot of cases.
All right, let's talk about some of the other actions you've taken over the past 100 days. Last month, you directed your Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to review 2 people who you perceived to be your political adversaries. And yet you told me in December that you would not direct the Justice Department to investigate your political foes. What changed?
Well, no, I just look at people, and I'm not directing anybody. They looked at these 2 people. They might have known it, or they might have heard it from 2 years ago. One person said, he knew me so well. He was, I think, on CNN or MSDNC, but they're both failing networks. You're happy to know, even though one of them, I guess, is related to you in one form or another, although they're trying to cut him loose as fast as possible. But it was well known that this one person, it was almost like he was my brother. I don't even know who he is. Maybe he was there. Maybe he was in the Oval Office a few times as a surrogate for, you know, somebody in some form of government, along with 25 other people that sat in the back of the room or stood in the back of a room. I have no idea who this guy is. And he's out there. And then he did a book called Anonymous. I think that's really subversion. I think it's spying. It's something really bad.
But you passed an executive order calling for your Attorney General to investigate that.
He's been looked at for a long time. And the other one said that the election was so wonderful. It was such a, well, it turned out it wasn't a wonderful election. It was a corrupt election.
Well, let me ask it this way, sir, because when we talked in December, I asked you, what is your message to people who didn't vote for you? Let me remind you of what you said. You said, I love you, and we're going to all work together. How does pursuing your political foes help to unify the country?
Did I really say I love you?
You really did. That's a direct quote.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right, but I'd like to see
I promise I'll show it to you. I'll show you the tape.
Look.
How does that help to unify the country?
I want to treat people fairly, whether they voted for me or not. I want to have a unified country. It's very hard because the media is so fake, including, like, even the way you ask questions. Every question is asked in a negative vein. There's a toy company that took a toddler's, you know, whatever, but you don't talk about the fact that gasoline is down at numbers that nobody believes possible. You know why they're down, by the way? Drill, baby, drill. We're drilling like crazy right now.
We try to make sure every question is fair, Mr. President.
Look, every question you ask says a very negative slant.
No, but look, I'm just curious.
And I'm fine for responding to you. I don't think you're very difficult at all to respond to be honest with you. But you know what? You should ask some positive things like, sir, it's amazing what you've done with gasoline. Because you know what? Gasoline's big business. A stroller is not big business.
To this question, Mr. President, you said you wanted to unify the country. Does going after political foes undercut that goal?
No, not at all. No, we want honest people.
Okay.
I think you have to do that. We want honest people in this country.
Let me ask you big picture. People who have lived in countries like the Philippines, Hungary, Russia, they look at some of your actions going after civil service, going after universities, law firms, the media. They say it's out of an authoritarian playbook. What do you say to those who believe you are taking the country down an authoritarian path?
Well, there you go again. Why don't you ask it a different way? Many people wanted to come into our country. Many people love Trump. I won the election. They didn't win the election. I got a lot more votes than they did. I won the popular vote. I won all 7 swing states by a lot. A lot of people were surprised. I said, I think you could win 4, maybe 5. No, I won all 7, and I won by a lot. And I won, actually, I think there was a lot of hanky-panky going on, but it was too big to rig. That's the good news. It's too big to rig. But let me just say, so when you make these statements about, people say this, people, well, you know, they had their chance at the election and they lost big. So you should ask the question differently. You should say, what about the people that want to be in this country? What about the people that love this country?
But what do you say? I'm asking it on behalf of those people, to give you a chance to respond to them. What do you say to those people, sir?
Those people are going to be very happy. They're going to have to see some results. And I think we had a great 100 days. There are a lot of people that say it was unprecedented. It was an absolutely unprecedented 100 days. And I hope that they're going to be right.
Do you see dissent as an essential part of democracy?
It's a part of democracy. It is. You're
always going to have dissent. Is it an important part of democracy?
Yeah, you're always going to have, Kristen, you're always going to have dissent. There's nothing you're going to do about that. Am I going to get 100% unified? It would be a strange place. I can't even imagine it where 100%. Look, you have people that are good people. They're very smart people. And they honestly believe we should have open borders and the entire world should be allowed to pour into our country. I think it's a 95-5 issue, but they believe it. They're not even bad people. Some of them are bad. You have people that honestly believe that men should be allowed to play in women's sports. Some of these people, I don't know any. I haven't been able to find any, but they exist. They say it's an 80-20 issue. I don't believe that. I think it's a 97-3 issue.
Do you think people should have the right to criticize you without fear of reprisal?
Absolutely, yeah, I do. That I do.
And how do you square that?
And I think that happens.
How do you square that with the fact that you have passed these executive orders asking the Attorney General to look into some of the people who've criticized you, who've been harshest against you?
I have been investigated more than any person in the history of the United States of America. I've been investigated more than the late, great, as I say at my rallies, Alphonse Capone. Alphonse Capone was a nasty man. He was the highest level gangster. And I have been investigated more than Al Capone, more than anybody. These people are evil people, and I won. And I'll tell you what, all I want to happen is for the Department of Justice and the FBI. Pam is great and Kash is great. I think they're two great people, but they're their own people. They want to do a fantastic job. And all I want to do and all I want to ask for is that they be allowed to do their job. I'm not telling them to do anything, and I believe I have the right to do it. I'm, in theory, the top law enforcement officer as the president. We went over this once before, and it turned out I was right. But I'm not looking to use that. We have two great people, and we have many, many incredible people under them, and I just want them to do their job and do it well.
Let me ask you about something I don't think you've been asked much about, which is you've branded your own cryptocurrency. The coin's value actually surged recently after you announced that top holders would be invited to have dinner.
I don't even know that. What did it surge to?
What did it surge to?
Yeah, what's it worth? You might as well tell me, because I have no idea.
Well, it surged. It surged. I will find it. Hold on one second. 5.2 or 58%. So 58%.
To what number?
That's not bad. 14.32.
What? Billion?
No, dollars per cryptocurrency.
$1 billion?
No.
What's the number? I mean, what is the amount?
The meme coin's value hit a peak of 75.35 on January 19th.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything.
And that's before your inauguration, and then it surged.
Look, I'm in favor of crypto.
Let me just ask you, what do you say to those who argue that when they hear that, they worry you're profiting from the presidency?
I'm not profiting from anything. All I'm doing is, I started this long before the election. I want crypto. I think crypto is important because if we don't do it, China's going to. And it's new. It's very popular. It's very hot. If you look at the market, when the market went down, that stayed much stronger than other aspects of the market. But I want crypto because a lot of people, millions of people want it. I don't know if you know that Biden went after it violently, and then before the election, he changed his tune entirely. His head of the SEC, everybody changed their tune. You know why? Because there were hundreds of millions of people that are participating in crypto, and they wanted to get their votes.
So you're not profiting off of the cryptocurrency?
I haven't even looked.
Has your family?
I'll tell you what. Look, if I own stock in something and I do a good job, and the stock market goes up, I guess I'm profiting. But who really profits is somebody like Nancy Pelosi, who uses inside information. She worked for $175,000 a year, and that's at the high end, and she's worth $150, $200 million. Okay? You ought to look at Nancy Pelosi, and you ought to look at some of these politicians that are stone cold crooks. I was very wealthy when I came in. Being president, I probably cost me money if you really look. In fact, I do something that no other president has done. They think maybe George Washington has done. I contribute my entire salary to the government, back to the government.
So will you contribute anything you earn from crypto back to the government? if that
I
happens?
never thought of that. I mean, should I contribute all of my real estate that I've owned for many years if it goes up a little bit because I'm president and doing a good job? I don't think so.
Okay.
But I've done something that surprisingly, they say nobody else has done, no other president has done. And it's a substantial salary. It's like $500,000 a year or $550,000 a year, 4 years, a couple of $1 million. I gave it to the government last time. I never got a story saying I gave it. Nobody cared if I gave it. I guarantee if I didn't give it, there'd be a big story. But no other president, they say, with the possible exception of George Washington, and they have been able to find those records. And we've had wealthy presidents before, but no other president has contributed the salary. And they told me before this that you will probably be asking me whether or not I'm going to contribute my salary again, but you haven't asked that.
Are you going to?
Yes.
You are. Okay.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, I appreciate we just made news there. Let's talk about foreign policy, sir.
Yeah.
You just signed a minerals deal with Ukraine. It's a sign, it seems, that the United States is invested in Ukraine's future. The Secretary of State told me this is a very critical week. Are you any closer to reaching a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia?
I hope so.
How would you characterize
I do believe
it?
we're closer with one party and maybe not as close with the other, but we'll have to see. I'd like to not say which one we're closer to, but we did do a deal for the American people that was good. We were able to get rare earth. You know, the Europeans are getting paid back. They have a loan. We didn't. Biden just gave them $350 billion. He has no idea where the money is, what happened. And at least we'll, in one form or another, get our, I don't feel so foolish. And remember this is Biden's war. This was a war that was never going to happen if I were president. This is a horrible, horrible war. And I get to see shots of soldiers through, satellite that are just so terrible. 5,000 soldiers are being, look, 5,000 soldiers a week on average are dying. They're not American soldiers, but I want to solve the problem. They're Russian soldiers and they're Ukrainian soldiers. And if I can save 5,000 souls, I just love doing it.
How long do you give both countries before you're going to walk away?
Well, there'll be a time when I will say, okay, keep going, keep being stupid.
When does
keep
that
fighting.
come? Are you close to it?
Sometimes I get close to it and then positive things happen, okay? So I hope it gets done.
Your close ally, Senator Lindsey Graham, has a sanctions bill against Russia. If you get to that point, Mr. President, where you're prepared to walk away, will you sign that sanctions bill?
Well, it depends on whether or not Russia is behaving toward coming to a peace. We want a peace deal. We want Russia and Ukraine to agree to a deal. We think we're fairly close, and we're going to save a lot of people from being killed. We save a lot of money, too, because we're spending money like, Europe is spending a third of the money that we're spending. And it's more important for Europe than it is for us. Biden had no control. He just sent money over there willy-nilly. Nobody had any idea what was happening, why they were doing it, why they were sending it. And it was massive amounts of money.
So you think you're close to a deal? What will Russia have to give up? Because Ukraine, there's been discussions they will have to give up some of the land.
Russia will have to give up all of Ukraine. Because that's what they want.
All of Ukraine, meaning they wouldn't keep any of the land that they've claimed?
Russia would have to give up all of Ukraine. Because what Russia wants is all of Ukraine. And if I didn't get involved, they would be fighting right now for all of Ukraine. Russia doesn't want the strip that they have now. Russia wants all of Ukraine. And if it weren't me, they would keep going. Do you know that the European Union leaders have asked me to call Putin so many times because he doesn't return their phone call?
You posted on social media he might be tapping you along.
Might be.
Did you misread
But you might
him?
be tapping me along, too, when you tell me how nice an interview this is going to be. So, I'm used to being tapped along.
Did you in any way misread Vladimir Putin?
Did I what?
Misread him, now that you're saying that.
I'll tell you about that in a month from now or 2 weeks from now. I have no idea. I can tell you this. His ambition was stopped to a large extent when he saw that it was me that was now leading the charge because he wasn't dealing with anybody in Europe. He wasn't calling him back. Do you know that I asked him, I said, did Biden ever call you in 3 years? Did Biden ever call? He said he never called. You know, Biden didn't call him one time. And all these thousands of soldiers, hundreds, millions of soldiers are dying. And people, not only soldiers, people dying in the cities and the towns, and the whole heritage of that country is being blown apart. I mean, the country's heritage is being blown apart. You know the steeples, those beautiful spires that you see, you know the most beautiful in the world? Yeah. Almost 95% of them are laying in smithereens, all broken up and so sad, laying all over the ground because they were shot. It's really a bad situation. And he didn't get one phone call from Biden. The war would have never started. And by the way, for 4 years, it didn't start. I was there for 4 years. It was the apple of his eye. This was the apple of Putin's eye. There was no chance he would have gone in.
What's the red line for you? At what point do you say, that's it, we're walking away?
Well, you'll know. I mean, there'll be a time when I may say that. And if I do, there may be something I can't, maybe it's not possible to do. There's tremendous hatred, just so you understand. Kristen, we're talking tremendous hatred between these two men and between, you know, some of the soldiers, frankly, between the generals. They've been fighting hard for 3 years. I think we have a very good chance of doing it.
Very quickly, if you do walk away, would that mean that you would pull military and intelligence?
I don't want to say that now. It's too early to say that. I don't want to get into that argument.
Let's move on to Canada. You have long talked about making Canada the 51st state. There's obviously a new Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who you spoke to after his victory. He says that you didn't talk to him in that call about making Canada a 51st state.
No, he called me. He was very nice, and I congratulated him. He had a victory. It's a very close victory. It's, you know, there's no majority or anything, so that's going to make things a little bit difficult, I think, for him to run. But he nevertheless had a victory, and he's a very nice man, I think.
Do you plan to talk to him about making Canada a 51st state?
He wants to come and see me. He's going to come this week or next week.
So will you talk to him about making Canada a 51st state, annexing Canada?
I'll always talk about that. You know why? We subsidize Canada to the tune of $200 billion a year. We don't need their cars. In fact, we don't want their cars. We don't need their energy. We don't even want their energy. We have more than they do. We don't want their lumber. We have great lumber. All I have to do is free it up from the environmental lunatics. We don't need anything that they have. We're giving them. I asked Mr. Trudeau, who I call Governor Trudeau, I said, you know, not Prime Minister, Governor. I said, Governor Trudeau, could I ask you one question? Why are we giving you $200 billion? Why are we subsidizing Canada? If Canada was a state, it wouldn't cost us. It would be great. It would be such a great, it would be a cherished state. And if you look at our map, if you look at the geography, I'm a real estate guy at heart. When I look down at that, without that artificial line that was drawn with a ruler many years ago, it was just an artificial line, goes straight across. You don't even realize what a beautiful country it would be. It would be great. But I don't think the American public wants me to pay $200 billion a year to subsidize Canada. Again, remember this.
Yeah.
We don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We don't need anything. We do very little business with Canada. They do all of their business practically with us. They need us. We don't need them.
You and I talked, and I asked you if you would rule out military force to take Greenland, and you said, no, you don't rule out anything. Would you rule out military force to take Canada?
Well, I think we're not going to ever get to that point. It could happen. Something could happen with Greenland. I'll be honest. We need that for national and international security.
But not with
I think
Canada?
It's highly unlikely. I don't see it with Canada. I just don't see it. I have to be honest with you.
Okay, but you don't rule it out for Greenland.
And by the way, Canada, they spend less money on military than practically any nation in the world. They pay NATO less than any nation. They think we're subsidized. They think we are going to protect them. And really, we are. But the truth is, they don't carry their full share, and it's unfair to the United States and our taxpayers.
But you are not ruling out military force to take Greenland.
I don't rule it out. I don't say I'm going to do it, but I don't rule out anything. No, not there. We need that. We need Greenland very badly. Greenland is a very small amount of people, which we'll take care of and we'll cherish them and all of that. But we need that for international security. Do you know we have Russian boats and we have Chinese boats, gunships all over the place, aircraft carriers, gunships, going up and down the coast of Greenland. We need that to be protected. Internationally, we need it.
So you are willing to send U.S. troops to claim a sovereign territory?
I didn't say that. You asked me a question. Would you? Is there a circumstance? It could happen. I doubt it will, but it certainly could happen with respect to Greenland.
Okay, let me ask you about Iran. Your administration has had conversations with Iran. Is the goal of these talks limiting Iran's nuclear program or total dismantlement?
Total dismantlement.
That's all you'll accept?
That's all I'd accept. Okay. Now, there's a new theory going out there that Iran would be allowed to have civilian, meaning to make electricity. But I say, you know, they have so much oil, what do they need it for? But, you know, I've seen it with other states where they're looking to do something and they have a lot of oil. Iran has tremendous energy. You know, I put sanctions, if you know that. I put pretty strong sanctions on 2 days ago on the oil. The sad part is that if Biden didn't get involved, if we had a competent president, you would have never had the attack on Israel. October 7th would have never taken place. Hamas would have had no money because Iran was broke. And now, in a period of 4 years during the Biden administration, they became very rich. They have over $300 billion cash in the bank. And they had no money. They were ready to make a deal with me. And it's very sad. Because of this rigged election, they didn't do it. Just another thing you can mark down to a bad election.
It's interesting what you're saying, though, because Secretary Rubio has said that he would accept, or the idea is there is an openness to accepting peaceful civil nuclear programs.
Well, that's what people, I didn't say anything contradictory. I said that people are talking about that, and this is something that's really pretty new in the dialogue. And I'd have to be, you know, my inclination is to say, what do you need that for? You have a lot of oil.
So you want total dismantlement, bottom line.
I think that I would be open to hearing it. You know, civilian energy, it's called. But, you know, civilian energy often leads to military wars. And we don't want to have them have a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple deal. I want Iran to be really successful, really great, really fantastic. The only thing they can't have is a nuclear weapon. Okay. If they want to be successful, that's okay. I want them to be so successful. And, you know, the Iranian people are incredible. I just don't want them to have a nuclear weapon because the world will be destroyed.
Just to recap, we're talking about your desire to claim Canada, Greenland. What do you say to people?
You forgot the Panama Canal.
Panama Canal. What do you say to people who say they voted for you because they wanted you to end foreign conflicts, not start new?
I don't see that as conflict. I think that's good for our country, those things. Look, the Panama Canal was taken over by China, effectively. Now China seems to have left, but the Panama Canal, think of this deal. We built the most expensive object we've ever built in the history of our country. That was Mount McKinley. They just took away, I just gave them back the name, but McKinley made the money. Teddy Roosevelt spent the money. McKinley gets very little credit, you know, but he made, you know how he made the money? Through tariffs. He was the big tariff president. Okay, but forget that. We built the Panama Canal. It was the most expensive thing. It would be the equivalent, like almost $2 trillion today. We've never spent it. And it was very successful. And Jimmy Carter gave it away for $1.
Panama insists Panama says they do control the canal, but we have a couple more questions left tonight.
Panama said what?
A little wrap.
Panama said what?
Panama says they still control it. I know you're saying China. Panama says they still control it.
You know, but if you would have gone there about 5.2 months ago, every single sign on the Panama Canal, with the exception of about 15% of them, was in Chinese.
Let me ask you, because we're nearing the end, just a couple more questions here.
I'm not complaining. You keep saying to me like I'm rushing.
No, you're not, and I really appreciate it.
I don't want to rush you. I don't want to make you nervous.
Thank you. The Trump Organization is selling hats that say Trump 2028.
Yeah.
Are you seriously considering a third term, Mr. President, even though it's prohibited by the Constitution, or is this about staying politically viable?
I will say this. So many people want me to do it. I have never had requests so strong as that. But it's something that, to the best of my knowledge, you're not allowed to do. I don't know if that's constitutional that they're not allowing you to do it or anything else, but There are many people selling the 2028 hat, but this is not something I'm looking to do. I'm looking to have 4 great years and turn it over to somebody, ideally a great Republican, to carry it forward. But I think we're going to have 4 years, and I think 4 years is plenty of time to do something really spectacular.
The Constitution does prohibit it. Some of your allies are pretty serious about this, though, Mr. President. I've spoken to them. They say they are coming up with potential ways.
Well,
obviously, the biggest one would be a constitutional amendment.
That's because they like the job I'm doing, and it's a compliment. It's really a great compliment.
Has anyone approached you, though, with an actual plan, a way to actually start the process
well, there are
of a
ways of doing it.
constitutional amendment?
There are ways of doing it, and you know the same thing. And if you look at the vice presidential thing, and you hear different concepts and different other people say you can have a write-in vote. There's lots of different things. With all of that being said, I want to be a great president. I will have served. Hopefully, everything will go well. I feel very good. I just did a physical. I took, unlike all other presidents, I took cognitive tests and I aced it. I got 100% correct. And one doctor said, there were numerous doctors watching. And he said, I've never seen that before. Biden didn't take a cognitive. He couldn't have gotten the first question right. But I came out great with the physical, both physically and mentally. And I just want to serve, do a great job. I'll be an 8-year president. I'll be a 2-term president. I always thought that was very important, to be honest with you. You know, if you look at President Polk, he was a 1-termer and he did some great things, actually. Pretty good president. And I'm not saying you can't do that, but there's something about being a 2-term president that was very important to me.
And just to put a button on it, has anyone in an official capacity presented you with, sir, here are some ideas by which you could actually get a constitutional amendment?
In a capacity of being a big supporter, many people have said different things, but I'm not looking at that.
You haven't had official meetings about it?
No. And just so you said, 4 years is a long time. I have almost 4 years. You know, all of these things that we've done more than any president, and even you might admit that. Nobody's done the extent of the things that we've done. Nobody's done this in essentially a little bit more than 3 months. As they say, 100 days. I'm looking to do a great job as president and set the country on the right track, because if I didn't win, this country would have failed. We would have been a failed nation.
You have built a political movement that has transformed the Republican Party. It's transformed the country, quite frankly.
Political movement in history, MAGA. Make America great again.
When you look to the future, Mr. President, do you think the MAGA movement can survive without you as its leader?
Yes, I do.
What gives you confidence?
I think it's so strong, and I think we have tremendous people. I think we have a tremendous group of people. We talked about a number of them. You look at Marco, you look at J.D. Vance, who's fantastic. You look at, I could name 10, 15, 20 people right now just sitting here. No, I think we have a tremendous party. And you know what I can't name? I can't name one Democrat. I mean, I look at the Democrats, they're in total disarray. They have a new person named Crockett. I watched her speak the other day. She's definitely a low IQ person. And they said, she's the future of the party. I said, you have to be kidding. I don't know what they're going to do. And I really believe in a 2-party system. Because it's good to be challenged. It's really good to have a 2-party. You know, it's good. Being challenged is okay. It keeps you sharp. I don't know what they're going to do. They have nobody. Bernie's 87 years old or something. And, you know, Biden is the worst thing that ever happened to old people, because he was grossly incompetent. And I think maybe for artificial reasons. You know, he had operations and things. So maybe that's an artificial. But I know people that are unbelievably sharp, and they're older than 87. But I watch Bernie Sanders. He's a nut job, but he's still sharp. He's sharp as he's the same guy he was. He hasn't gone down. But Biden is really, he's the worst thing to happen to old people.
I know that you are only 100 days in, but as we sit here today, who do you see as your successor, Mr. President?
Well, it's far too early to say that, but you know, I do have a vice president, and typically it would be, and JD's doing a fantastic job.
He would be at the top of the list?
It could very well be. I don't want to get involved in that. I think he's a fantastic, brilliant guy. Marco is great. There's a lot of them that are great. I also see tremendous unity. But certainly you would say that somebody's the VP. If that person is outstanding, I guess that person would have an advantage. But I think the other people would all stay in unbelievably high positions. But, it could be that he'd be challenged by somebody. We have a lot of good people in this party.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.